Hello and welcome to today's topic, which will be addressing Module 3 and McLuhan's saying, "The medium is the message." So, in order to premise this discussion, I looked at the BBC Radio video and just the different ways that media has evolved. So, just looking at the ways that it has transformed from oral to print and increasingly become visual, especially with the invention of new technologies such as film or social media. And these were all areas which were of consideration while I was developing my own understanding of McLuhan's quote. So I think the medium is the message is a saying which I find truth in, and this will be expressed in my discussion, especially later on, as I look at the quote which I have chosen to explore, which is this: "Ours is a brand new world of all-at-onceness." So I chose this quote because I really think it applies to my own experience, in that I have found that the different medias which have become available have increasingly so become both readily and easily available. And in that availability comes the option to have multiple mediums available at once. And personally, I've found that that has really helped my skill of multitasking, but hindered my focus. And because of that, I found this quote to be something really interesting and personal, because it's something I don't think was true in the past, and it's becoming more and more true now. And in exploring the quote, I wanted to look at it in its grander context. So I discovered that the quote goes on to say, "Ours is a brand new world of all-at-onceness. Time has ceased, space has vanished. We now live in a global village, a simultaneous happening. Electric circuitry profoundly involves men with one another." And in considering this quote in its full context, I found that the global village itself is becoming the medium and thus the message. And to kind of put it into practice, I wanted to remove myself from the global village. So I took a bit of a social media break. I actually tried to reduce my technology use as much as I could in this current climate, and I came up with some interesting findings. So, first of all, kind of going back to the lack of focus, I have realized that my attention span is really affected by having so much readily available information that came all at once, and having to actually find ways of occupying my focus was something that was challenging, especially at first. And I think that it is probably something that is going to be challenging for a lot of people now, and that it's a skill that maybe should be emphasized more in this global village. As well, I found that separating myself from that space helped me to distance myself from some current events which were really weighing on me through just the pandemic, and in general, a lot of the negative things going on have been affecting my mental health, and I found that I had quite a positive experience. Though that isn't to say that this technology is all negative, but I do think it's important to consider the global village as a medium, just sending a message that might be uniform in its possible effect on people. And I think that knowing that is something which is really important to consider, both as an individual or as a future teacher, especially now that the learning is changing in its medium. So I think it's important to consider the possibility of focus being something which is emphasized more and critical thinking so that we don't become subject to the message of this medium, which is becoming more and more prevalent in our current climate. And I thought about that in the context of learning, particularly my own learning, and how my learning has evolved, particularly now, in the context of online learning. And I thought about it in comparison to the different classrooms which I have experienced throughout my learning. And this reflection really revealed to me the quality of my learning and how it was dependent and really shaped by the classroom which I experienced, or the space in which the learning took place for me. And I realized that the medium which was most effective for me was not one where I could receive that information all at once, but one where it didn't overwhelm me, where I could build on my knowledge, where I wasn't faced with just overwhelming amounts of resources and knowledge, but one where I created the understanding myself and was able to really be involved in the classroom and where I was able to interact. And I think that this really connects to language awareness, especially in how students are now being taught. And I think that this really reveals that it's important to incorporate a lot of strategies which encourage students to build confidence, and that those strategies aren't unilateral, which I think reflects what David Lukowich said in his lecture about the importance of having not just canonical texts, but ones which might reflect a kid's or student's culture and their self, and how critical literacy requires not just, certain texts, but also supplementary texts to develop things beyond just decoding. And I think all of this is really imperative in creating a space for students to better learn, and that it really expresses certain implications which are extremely relevant to topics like 21st century learning, or relationships and contexts and texts and tools within a classroom. I think that the medium as a message really makes it important to make that medium accessible so that things like differentiation or culturally responsive teaching can take place. I believe that these implications also show that all-at-onceness is something that needs to be considered in order to build as opposed to just overwhelming students, and that's really applicable to things like scaffolding. So again, these two quotes from McLuhan, as well as a lot of his ideas, are just really pertinent to these subjects, and I think that the time which has ceased and the space which has vanished need to be brought back into the classroom to allow students to fully develop themselves. And I think that considering them has really revealed to me the importance of theory to my own practice, and I believe that they can be applicable to any individual and especially teacher. Thank you.